Welcome to Wake Up and Live with Christopher Flagg. This is a daily podcast to encourage and inspire godly living. Let's join in and listen to today's message.
Good morning. Thank you so much for again tuning in today. We're going to continue on today where we left off yesterday about the power of if and the if structure of life. We talk so much about in life about if only, the if only regrets. If I had done this or if I hadn't done that, then my life would be different. And I want us to look at the what if possibilities, that when we begin to see God in the light of if, that it will change everything we can think about today and for tomorrow. I want us to look at that Romans 8, and we're going to look at those different statements. But first of all, I want to start off with a statement that was made by Eric Metas. He said this: everything I rejected about God was not God. If you think about that, most people who reject God are really rejecting religion without knowing it. They aren't really rejecting God for who He is. They are actually rejecting God for who He isn't. And Eric went on to say this: everything I rejected about God was not God, it was religion. It was people who go to church and do not show the love of Jesus. People who do not practice what they preach. People who are indifferent to the poor and the suffering. I had rejected that. But guess what? Jesus had also rejected that. Jesus was and is the enemy of dead religion. And I want to kind of continue on in that, because you know what? The most insidious lie that we can believe about God is that He is somehow against us. It's the very same lie that planted the seeds of doubt in Eve's spirit in the Garden of Eden. We've doubted God's goodness ever since, and it's the root cause of thousands of other problems. If the enemy can ever get us to buy into that original lie, we've postured ourselves against God because we think God is against us. Then we reject God for all the wrong reasons. No, and 1,000 times no. God is for you. God is for you in every way imaginable. God is for you for all eternity. There is a simple rule of thumb in journalism. Don't bury the lead. So here's the lead. God is for you. The rest of all what I'm going to talk about and the rest of these messages are insequential. We're going to take the grade 8 one verse at a time, but the leading question is this: if God is for us, who can be against us? It's doubly important, so I'll double back to it again. Back to what Eric Metas said. Along with identifying what he had rejected that wasn't really God, he profiled the good God that he had rediscovered by thinking of Him from a place of honesty rather than religiosity. He detailed God's most applaudable attributes, and then he asked a brilliant question. He said this: who would reject that? This was a rhetorical question, but let me answer it anyway. The obvious answer is no one. No one would ever reject a God like that. I have a theory. If you don't love God, it's because you don't know God. And I hope that doesn't come across as condescending in any way or shape or form. I just believe it. To know God is to love God, not the God who isn't, the God who is. What is there not to love? After all, God is love. Those who reject God because they believe God is against them are rejecting the God who isn't. There was a guy named Archimedes, and you may not know him, but he was famous for this quote that said, "Give me a place to stand and I will move the earth." Archimedes didn't invent the lever, but he did coin the law of the lever. Simply put this: the lever amplifies the input force to provide a greater output force. So the longer the lever, the greater the leverage. So the concept of leverage has been, it's been leveraged 1,000 different ways, but I want you to let me zero in on a systems thinking. Because you see, in any system, a leverage point is the place in a system structure where a solution element can be amplified. You see, a high leverage point, right, is a place where a small amount of change force can cause a lot larger change in the system's behavior. It's a 1% change that makes a 99% difference. You see, there is no higher leverage point than the two-letter word if. It defines our deepest regrets, and if only. It defines and defies impossible circumstances as if. It's pregnant with the infinite possibilities of what if. And it overcomes all refutations of no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Biblically speaking, if is the conditional conjunction that turns God's eternal promises into our present realities. Each of those promises is a high leverage point, but perhaps no promise in the Bible has more leverage than Romans 8:31. If God is for us, who can be against us? That one little if can change your life. If God is for you, it doesn't matter what comes against you. And if it doesn't matter what comes against you, if God is for you, and no weapon formed against you will prosper, and he that is in us is greater than he that is in the world, we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. You see, religion is all about what you can do for God. Christianity is all about what God has done for you. But it starts with this kernel of truth. God is for you. If the Father is on your side, it's game on. If Christ is in our corner, the fight is fixed. And if the Holy Spirit is on our tag team, just bar the door. In his breakout seller, The Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell defines the tipping point as the moment of critical mass, the threshold or the boiling point. It's the moment when an idea or trend or social behavior passes the point of no return and gains acceptance. Gladwell shows some brilliant examples in his book, but I want to borrow that concept and kind of broaden it. In the realm of physics, a tipping point is where the object is displaced from a stable state of equilibrium into a new state. In economics, it's the point where an emerging technology becomes the industry standards. In sociology, it's when a quorum of people adopts a behavior so that it reaches critical mass and goes viral. And in sports, it's the moment when the momentum just shifts. Spiritually speaking, the tipping point is when you believe without any reservation that God is for you. It's the revelation that God doesn't just love you, He likes you. He loves you enough to die for you, and He likes you enough to spend eternity with you. Yet some of us remain skeptical. We project our self-contempt onto God, assuming that God must be angry with us as we are with ourselves. Or we fall into this performance-based trap of thinking that our behavior determines God's posture toward us, whether that is for or against. Listen to the fact that God is for you as proven on Calvary's cross. It's simple and it's amazing as that. God is good plus God is love equals God is for you. What's the first thing the angels try to conceive? They tried to convince what? The shepherds of what? That when they announced the birth of Christ, after telling them what? Not to fear. And the feeling comes from this faulty understanding of God's intentions, of this false assumption that God is against us. They announced glad tidings of great joy. And what else? Goodwill toward men. It's a small statement with a long lever. It was the angel's way of saying God is for you. It's a positioning statement. God is on our side. God is in our corner. And it also establishes God's will is goodwill. His will is only good and always good. He never holds out on us. No good thing will God withhold from those who walk uprightly before Him. Go ahead, reject God for who He isn't. Then accept Him for who He is. God is for you. I read a magazine, the Wired magazine, one time, and it was guest edited by the producer Christopher Nolan, and it was devoted to the physics of film, including one of Nolan's mind-blowing benders, Memento, Inception, and Interstellar. And as much as I like the issue, I dislike that Stanley Kubrick, quoted on the back of the cover. He may be regarded as one of Hollywood's greatest film directors of all times, but I don't like the way his script reads. He said this: "The most terrifying fact about the universe is not that it is hostile, but that it is indifferent. But if we can come to the terms with this indifference, then our existence as a species can have genuine meaning." In my humble opinion, Kubrick's eyes were wide shut. I believe the polar opposite, and that's the antidote to indifference. I mean, the Oscar goes to the great eight. It's the first word and the final word. God is for you every day in every way. That is the most terrifying fact in the universe. Terrifying, wonderful. The crucifixion spells the end of if only regrets. And the resurrection spells the beginning of the what if possibilities. And when this life ends, the infinite what if awaits us. What if you rejected everything about God that wasn't God and accepted Him for who He is? God is for you. And that's what I want to leave you with today, that God is for you. He is the one that's going to be in your corner. He's the one that's going to be with you. And if God is for us, who can be against us? Ask yourself that question, because I'll tell you what, the answer will change you and revolutionize your heart and your spirit today, so that you can walk in the what if possibilities that God would have for you today and no longer live in the if only regrets of yesterday. So today, as you wake up and live, just empowered and blessed and loved by God, know that God is for you, God is with you, and God is going to do great things through your life. So join me again tomorrow as we're going to continue to look at the Romans ifs, and hopefully that God will speak something into your heart that would change your life forever. God bless. See you tomorrow.
Thank you for tuning in today for Wake Up and Live. Join us each day for a new inspiring message. Also check out our Saturday morning's Word and Worship for 30 minutes of getting refueled, plus our Sunday sermon series on the seasons of life.